Welcome to another episode of the Scaling Business Podcast. Today, I'm really excited to be sitting with Che Metcalfe. Che, welcome to the podcast. What I'm really excited today is about this conversation is, even though you've been in business for a very long time, the last decade or so for you have been really spectacular, and most of us have watched you take a company from very humble beginnings to being a national brand. So I'm really keen for someone listening today to learn what are the strategies that you use to go from start, scale, what are the mindsets, what has been some of the transitions you made through the process, and up until now where you obviously talking about your current business, Rumi. So welcome to the show. So I'm really excited. I remember the first time I met you back in 2015, your company, Unity Wireless, was still fairly small. I remember those are the times when someone would sign up. I signed up for you. I signed up for Unity because it was the hottest thing, the hottest startup back then. And I remember you showing up to my office, and I was like, "How is this for customer service?" You sign up for an ISP, and the CEO shows up in your office. So moving from those early scrappy days to what it is now. When you look back, if I was to take you back to the chair back then, and you're visualizing or thinking about the future, did you ever see it getting to this stage, getting this big, or getting to this point?
To be honest, no. I didn't think it would get as big as it did.
Yeah.
And obviously, I can't take all of the credit for
Of
that.
course.
Because ultimately, as may come out in the conversation, ultimately the new CEO on the board removed me from the company at one point, which I co-founded. But I had hopes that perhaps it might be $100 million company, and I might be able to achieve a $10 million exit, somewhere around there. That was my goal when I started the company, because I had started other companies previously and had never achieved an exit. So starting a company is one thing, getting through the valley of death's another thing, getting to profit and having a happy team, all of those things, that's one thing. But then actually building a business that can scale and exit and having the right business model, that's a completely different beast. So Unity from the ground up was designed for an exit.
That makes a lot of sense. Was Unity the first big business that you built, or were you one of those Elon Musk people who had another big successful business and then you roll out the success to this one? Or
I believe my first business before that, so I only ever had two businesses.
Okay.
And one of the first business I had started a side business as part of that.
Okay.
But there was still the same business technically. So it was really only one, and it was brought to an abrupt halt by the GFC. Now,
okay.
it's not, I can't say it's completely the GFC. Some of that probably, the failure of that company rests on my shoulders as well. But the GFC killed it overnight. So let me explain that. So I had started a web design company, which originally was architectural visualization. So people talk about pivoting. I had studied building design and drafting at TAFE. I bought a computer, taught myself 3D modeling, and I went around to the architects asking them, would they want to use my services to visualize buildings that are yet to be built. And I found out that there wasn't much money in the industry and that I was a bit ahead of my time and they didn't want to use the service. So then I ended up, one of the architects I was speaking to said, "Can you build a website?" And me being me said, "Yes, of course I can." I'd never built a website in my life. Went home and taught myself HTML. After I built that website, I started to get other clients, and then I built a modest web design team. There were 5 of us.
Yep.
And we were doing well. And then the .com bubble burst.
Oh.
And that was back in those days. So at that point, there was a big backlash against websites, and companies didn't want to spend money on websites anymore. There was that big boom and bust kind of period where everyone thought websites were everything, and you could charge $100,000 if you had a good .com and you'd built a website. Turned into a space where nobody wanted a website anymore. So that kind of killed that. That was just when 3G was about to hit Australia. So then I thought, these are the same skills that you use for web design. I can migrate to being a mobile app developer. And we're talking about just the start of 3G. We're talking about Nokia 3610 kind of era with Snake on the phone.
Oh, wow.
It was all Java applications, 64K, tiny little apps. So I started investigating that and using the skills that I'd acquired from web design. I was doing a lot more interactive web design like Flash and real-time 3D, this sort of stuff. So I transferred those skills into mobile applications. And at the World Congress on IT, we demonstrated a business directory on a map. So what basically Google Maps has become, but these were on iPacs, the personal digital assistants back then.
Okay.
And the first like big 3G brick phones were coming out at that point. It was just the start.
Is that the early 2000s or?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the date. It would have been, early 2000s. Yes. Yeah. And Mnet, who you probably would have, maybe Mnet was still around.
Oh, still around. I think in the early 2000s.
They had acquired $9-point-something million in funding to stimulate 3G application development in the Australian market. So we worked fairly closely with them on opportunities and showed off this app at the World Congress in IT, and we got the attention of Compaq and a whole bunch of other companies who were like, this is really cool, I haven't seen this before. That led to developing mobile games and starting to dip our toe in the water with making mobile games, which eventually got the attention of THQ. THQ's game publisher in the UK, and they were one of the first game publishers making mobile games, Java mobile games, for Nokias and Motorola's and all that sort of stuff. And that's back in the day, Crazy Frog. You pay for ringtones, you pay for wallpapers, you pay for all those things and these little Java games.
Yeah.
So they contacted us out of the blue and said, could we do some porting for them? Porting, for those who don't know, is taking the source code of a mobile game and making it work across the plethora of devices that were around then. So that, we'd have to make a game work on 200 different devices. A little 64K game with different screens, different input mechanisms, different ways of dealing with Java. So we would alter the code, put it on the phone and test it. So back then, I didn't know what porting was. It's like the web design again. THQ contacts me out of the blue and says, can you port this game to these 15 handsets? I didn't have the handsets. It was somewhere like Easter and there was like public holidays and I couldn't get hold of anyone. And they gave us like 4 days or something. But they said there was some amount of money. It might have been £5,000 per device or something. For me, that was a lot of money then.
Were you based in Adelaide or were you
in Adelaide?
In Adelaide, okay. Yeah.
And I didn't even have an office. I was working out of a home.
Oh, wow.
And I took on the project, and myself and 2 other developers, we didn't sleep for like 3 or 4 days, and we somehow managed to pull this off. And then we sent the code to THQ, and they were like, amazing. Basically, you're hired. We're going to send all our work to you going forward. But they also said we didn't actually think you could do it. It was just a test to see what your capability was. So we kind of knocked it out of the park, and then we won all of their work for the EMEA region. And so that started what that company became. So we started architectural visualization, ended up being a mobile gaming company, first of its kind in Australia, pioneered that space. It grew into a team of around 25 people, mainly developers who we had trained straight out of university. So we'd get a uni graduate, teach them the porting game, mobile application development. We built up a lot of knowledge and skills in that area. So that company was going well. We eventually got EA as a client and a bunch of other publishers. So we're doing work all around the world.
Oh, wow.
And then in parallel, we were doing Bluetooth games.
Okay.
And the Bluetooth games meant that we had to understand the Bluetooth spec really well. And Bluetooth's got something like 256 channels that it can hop between. And part of reading the spec, I discovered that Bluetooth can have maybe 100 devices in an area all connected to each other like peer-to-peer, and they can all be sharing information. So I had a bit of a light bulb moment, as you do. It always happens in the shower. It was in the shower. And I developed a concept for what became Podmo, which was basically a pirate telecommunications network, where you installed a little Java app on your phone, and you can connect peer-to-peer to other people. So let's say you're in the mall. You could technically call someone at the other end of the mall without any mobile network, just going from peer-to-peer to peer-to-peer. And so we developed a little Bluetooth server that we were putting in Chibo cafes and different places around Adelaide. And the idea was eventually there'd be enough of these Bluetooth stations around that you could all connect and call for free. Because in those days, mobile data and mobile content, everything was very expensive.
Yeah, I remember those days. Yeah.
Yeah, so we were trying to build a network for the people that was affordable, where people could share content. It's like an advanced social network.
Yeah.
If you took, Instagram, Facebook, something else and cobbled it together into a free mobile network, that's kind of what it was. So
Yeah.
I had those two companies. It was just before the GFC.
Yeah.
I'd just raised some money for Podmo. I'd never raised money externally. Everything was bootstrapped up until then. And someone had offered to buy half of the gaming company and take the company to the US. I was going to move to the US, to LA, and I was going to set up an office there, and everything was looking very good for me. It was like I'm gone from, starting my first business, everything was a success pretty much up until then, and then GFC hit.
Yeah.
And then that's when the doom started.
Yeah.
That's when basically overnight every one of the game publishers who was giving us work just stopped answering the phone. We had all of these contracts in the pipeline. They had producers for each game, and none of the producers would return our calls. We didn't know what was going on. And then one of the staff saw on Facebook a refundancy party at THQ. Basically, they'd all been made redundant.
Oh, wow.
The day after the GFC hit, they were like all marched out of the building. So the game publishers really shrunk at that point, and they only continued, big titles for PlayStation and Nintendo or whatever they were working on, the Xbox, the big titles, and mobile just went out the door straight away. So,
Was it the gaming company? Was it a service-based business where you provided a service to these guys, or was it a product type?
yeah, it's service, and that's where I discovered. So I knew the guys from Rising Sun, I knew the guys from Ratbag, I knew what it was like. You're only as good as your last contract, and you have to scale up and scale down. Someone might come along as a gaming company tomorrow and say, hey, we need you to build 1,000 games in 12 months and they're worth X each. And you're like, well, that's a big contract. I'm going to scale up and do that. And at the end of that, you're going to make all these people redundant. It's not a nice business. And I didn't like the business model. And that's probably the biggest thing I learned from that. Also had a good taste of what failure's like.
Okay.
And prior to that, I was probably a bit naive, maybe a little bit arrogant, thinking that this is easy and that I can just keep doing this. I was doing a lot of speaking, a lot of public speaking, a lot of telling people how they can digitize their business. I was doing a lot of advocacy, building communities, startup community in Adelaide, and every night I was at some different event doing something different. There was always something going on. And a lot of advocacy for mobile application development. But that all came to a screaming halt, and that's when, the phone stopped ringing. The staff didn't want to talk to me. There's that whole thing of when you're the leader, when things are going well, it's great. But as soon as it's bad, the knives come out. It's your fault. You caused it. Whatever. And, I take some responsibility for it, but ultimately the GFC ruined that business. Not many people can sustain their two biggest clients disappearing overnight with no warning. It wasn't like we were doing poor work. It wasn't a competitor got better than us. It was literally some people in America who decided to bundle bad credit with good credit and create the subprime issue that caused the GFC, which then caused a global economic collapse, which finished that business. So that was my first business technically.
So I'm very keen to understand, because when you've had a business where you're growing, everything looks very good, it's very easy to tie your identity in terms of the big shop, this and that. And then when a business fails, and I'm talking from personal experience, I know what it's like to spectacularly fail. And have something that you really tie so much of your identity to just disappear in your eyes. What was the process of, I guess, picking yourself up? Did you how did it affect you, and how did you?
What's your process of picking?
yourself up? Did you
It
take
take
a
how long
long
to-
time to pick yourself, or did you just kind of?
Absolutely.
About
I'm
a bit.
probably still not 100%. It's devastating. Like
Yeah.
you said, you tie your whole identity to it. I don't say I have a huge ego, but I have an ego. I think having an ego is healthy. I don't have a huge ego. Like, I don't have to walk into a room and demand everyone listens to me over anyone else or anything like that. However, I was being told over and over and over, what you're saying is great, what you're doing is great. And you get told that. And it's like, you're doing all these amazing things, and I'd be in the advertiser all the time, and people would be talking about my success. Other entrepreneurs would say, how are you doing this? And so you start to get this identity that I'm successful. And you, whether you are humble or not, eventually that creeps into your mind. It's the same as if you've got someone negative in your life telling you every day you're crap. Eventually you'll feel crap. It's just, it works the other way around. And whilst I'd like to think I remain relatively humble, I probably got a bit carried away, if I'm honest, and believed in myself a little bit too much. And so being humbled like that was probably the best thing that could happen. However, I just remember that feeling. I remember having to walk into work because I used to live down at King William
Street Road, the cobblestone part of King William, down in Unley. And I used to walk to work every day, and I remember that was like the longest walk of my life, walking into work that day to tell everyone you don't have a job anymore, because there was no way we were going to find clients that big after the GFC to fix the problem. So it was like, that was drastic, sudden, and terrifying.
Yeah.
I ended up in a lot of debt because you've got leases, you've got all of these expenses that are in your business. 25 people, that's a lot of people. Wages are owed, superannuation, all of these things. You can't just stop a business like that and have no cash flow. I was counting on that money that was going to come in. So that was all terrible. And like I said before, the phone stopped ringing. So all the events I'd get asked to come and talk at, nobody wanted to know me. Adelaide's very conservative, I feel. And rather than celebrating what I had done and learning from what had happened, and in a time after the GFC, if people genuinely were your friends and wanted to support you, they'd gather around you and go, don't worry, we'll pick you up, let's get on with this. But no, it was radio silence, zero. So you're left to wallow in your own devastation or misery, or however you want to put it, and a lot of introspection, a lot of thinking, a lot of what you'll do next. So I ended up doing all sorts of jobs. I did web development, I did some real estate, I did
Like, as in, you doing the jobs, or like working for somebody? Or?
yeah, working for other people.
Okay.
And it's hard when you've been a CEO and you're that well known. People are like, oh, if you get a job here, you'll just hang around for 2 months and you'll be gone. And so it's very hard to get a job again, and your skill set is now different. You haven't been on the tools. Really,
I found the same. I found the same when my last business failed and I had to go back to work. I found the same. They're always like, is he gonna rise? Is he gonna do it? And I also found that problem of, you used to having a level of autonomy and direct things to being able to do, now having to meet someone else's KPIs and
and having to answer to someone else. That it's not that I can't do it. I prefer not to do it. Once you've had the freedom to make your own decisions and create something, going back to being like in a cage is very difficult. I did it, obviously, and I was always respectful, and I worked hard for whoever employed me, and I did what I said I would do. But there was a part of me that was missing, that would never be replaced by working for someone else once you've worked for yourself. And so, I did all of those odd jobs. I think it was 4 or 5 years until I started Unity. And I don't know if in that period, I didn't know whether I would ever get a chance again to start another company, or whether I wanted to, or how that would happen, or how that opportunity you get. If you didn't already have one, you have a larger imposter syndrome at that point, because you go, did I just fluke all of that? Was I just lucky? Was I in the right place at the right time? Was I really any good at anything? Why were people putting me on this pedestal and saying I was great? Maybe it was all bullshit, and maybe I'm not good at this at all. You have all of those sorts of doubts. And I guess my mind's very active, and I'm always thinking, and I just kept thinking of things to do. And it's actually Podmo that led to starting Unity. because I had started to learn about radio technology and radio waves and Bluetooth and so on.
Yeah.
I had an interest in Wi-Fi also.
Yeah.
And I discovered in the US that because the US is very much broken up for telecommunications, instead of having a Telstra and an Optus, they'll have 20 different carriers, and there might be a Midwest town that's got its own carrier that doesn't exist anywhere else. And I saw that in one of the towns that they were doing high-speed internet using class license Wi-Fi. So just standard Wi-Fi 5 gigahertz, 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi that we've got same in Australia. And there was a company called Ubiquity which was selling this equipment, and it was very affordable.
Yeah.
But I saw the speeds it was achieving, and I was like, hang on a minute, this is way better than what they're rolling out with the NBN. Why aren't we using more wireless technology here? I didn't know that companies like Internode had done this before. I didn't know there were other companies already in Australia doing that.
Okay.
Yeah. So people had tried doing wireless connections using class license before, because the model has to work, right? A copper line coming into a house, we used to use ADSL. The copper line was already there. It was easy and affordable to scale internet connections over that copper line. When you switch to wireless, if you use a license spectrum, which is ideal, because then you have a connection that's protected, that connection, just the license alone, will mean it's not affordable to deliver internet into a home. Whereas if you use class license Wi-Fi, it's free. You don't pay a license to use that. And then the equipment is affordable. So I was looking at the mathematics behind it, and I built a model in a spreadsheet, and I said, okay, it's going to cost $200 to set a client up. That's the equipment, not the licensing, and then it'll be X amount of dollars to do the install. I can charge them this much a month, and then I model that out over, say, a 24-month contract, and I go, there's a decent profit margin in delivering internet over wireless. So I looked at that, and I was like, this could work.
Yeah.
But I didn't know how to start a company like that. I didn't have any connections in that space. I knew it would take a lot of money. I was like, this is going to be too hard probably to start.
Yeah.
And then it's just by chance I was looking on LinkedIn, and there was a guy on LinkedIn, and he had all of his skills that it was almost unbelievable. He said he had worked on designing or implementing nuclear plants in Russia. He'd rewritten the Commercial Tenancy Act in Queensland. He was the inventor of the year for 1 year for some car alarm thing or something. And I'm looking at all the things he said that he'd done, and I'm like, this is too crazy. And he was in Adelaide, and I was like, who can this person be? So I wrote to him just by chance on LinkedIn and said, hey, do you want to catch up for lunch? I'd love to hear about your journey and what you've done. And in that conversation, he asked me, what are you up to? And I said, I've got a day job at the moment, but I'm itching to do something again. I don't know what. I've got this idea over here, but I need capital to start it. And Adelaide, notoriously for me at that point, was full of tire kicker angel investors who Shark Tank you and offer you $50,000 for 99% of your company. I'm exaggerating a bit, but it was pretty much like that.
I understand,
And getting a good valuation and finding a real investor in Adelaide was very hard. So I was skeptical, because he said, I can get you the money. And I said, how will you get me the money? He goes, don't worry, I've got some connections. He goes, I'll introduce you to someone.
Yeah.
I had a phone call with someone from Queensland, from Brisbane, was an anaesthetist.
Okay.
Ended up being on the board and our founding investor in Unity.
Okay.
Basically had a phone call with him, sent him a couple of documents, and a few days later he put money in the account, and the business was away. And I had my first investor, and Unity was born.
I want to take you before we begin the Unity stories. I'm still interested in terms of when you had your failure, and I'm talking even from my own personal experience. I find that a lot of people find it really hard to recover, or they take a long time to recover. And what was it about you that found your courage to start again? Because I'll be honest, for me, that is something I really struggled with. Finding the courage to start again, picking yourself up picking up the pieces, building a self-esteem, building your for lack of a better word, overcoming that imposter syndrome. again, and kind of believing, okay, I can do this again. I'm not a phony. I'm not a fake. I'm not a phony. I'm not an imposter. Even though my last business failed, I still got the skills to do this. What was the biggest shift for you that allows you to have the courage to go back again? And by the time you started, around the time when you started Unity, around 2005, 2004, so 2014, 15 there, back then the sexy and easy thing to do would have been to start a software startups, because software
Build an app.
Exactly. So, you had a big background in building apps. Software startups were all the rage back then.
Yep.
So it looks like not only did you kind of find a way to get back on your feet, but actually build something that was really hard, because building it's a lot more easier now with 3D printing and technology advancement to do something that is hardware related. But I would assume 11, 12 years ago, that would have been bloody hard.
Literally, and I don't want to spoil the ending of Unity, but a $3.7 billion company, however many years ago when it sold, probably worth $5 billion now. Starting a company like that in your bedroom in an industry that you don't understand, up against behemoths like Telstra, the NBN, all of these other companies, your chance of getting through that has to be like 1 in a trillion. It literally has to.
Pretty much.
Like, it would be ridiculous odds that would achieve. I don't know why I thought I could do it, or how I thought I could do it, or how I did do it. I still probably don't understand it. But we can unpack that more. But going back to the original question, I just have a determination that I can kind of understand where it comes from. It probably comes from my childhood.
Yeah.
And I grew up in a small town. I moved out of home as a young person, wanting to take on the world. I had a lot of ambition. I had probably had a bit of a chip on my shoulder. I wanted to prove that I was someone. I was very ambitious, and I wanted to prove everyone wrong, that I could be successful and that I could do great things. For some reason, I just have that belief in me. And I don't understand the full psychology behind that, but I'm not a person who gives up easily, and I put everything into something once I've started. Like, some of the scariest days were at Unity were because it was so successful and we were growing so fast. I would have to get on a plane every 3 or 4 months and go and raise another number of millions of dollars from the East Coast to keep up with the growth, because the faster it grew, need a bigger office, need more staff, need more computers, need more equipment to put on roofs. In the model, the customers pay off at the end of 12 months or the end of 24 months, but you're burning cash until that point. So you've got to raise that money to keep that going. So circling back, how I picked myself up and did it, I don't know. I won't give up, I guess. It's just in my nature. And I don't know what makes me different to other people, but I know I am different to other people in that way. Some people can't handle startup land for 3 months, and you've seen it. They'll go to a lecture for someone and they'll say, I'm an entrepreneur, and they haven't done anything yet. They'll start their first little business, they've hit the first speed bump in the road, or they haven't even really started, or they're living at home still, so they don't have that pressure of having to earn money and get out and do something real, and they get the first speed bump and they fall over and they never touch it again. They go get a job somewhere else. Now, nothing against those people. They're just not built the same way.
It's not
I'm
for
different.
everybody.
I guess I'm more courageous, less fearless, more determined, less likely to give up. I do actually like solving problems, and it keeps my mind active. So I guess startups suit me in that way. There's always a problem. You've been there. Nothing is easy. Just when you think it's going well, something will appear and go bad, and you've got to solve that problem.
But I think having a chip on your shoulder is not a bad thing.
I hope I'm at peace with it now, but I still have a little bit of a chip on my shoulder, because as I said before, when I finally did this, you're the second person I've spoken to since I left Unity about what happened. Third person, a journalist spoke to me, and this is the second podcast I've done on the subject. In all of that time after that, of the success of that company, nobody has bothered to go, let's unpack that journey, let's learn from it. There's not many people in Adelaide who build multi-billion-dollar companies from the ground up and achieve what we did. And it's interesting that that again, probably because of the way it ended, that I got fired from my own company spectacularly, and it's probably because of that that there's this mentality in Adelaide that failure isn't accepted or something, or that was a failure, and somehow, but I achieved what I set out to do. Built a massive company, and I got a great exit for myself, and which is what I set out to do. So for me, it was a success.
Absolutely.
The ending wasn't a fairy tale exactly, but it's exactly what I set out to do.
And I think you're not going to be the first person who ever happened. I mean, they got rid of Steve Jobs. He started freaking out. And they still managed to get.
But then they invited him back. I haven't been invited back yet. Do you think that will happen? No.
You never know. Maybe you do. Maybe you end up doing a Pixar thing where you start another thing and take them over. You never know. But I'm sure we'll unpack that as we go along. So okay, going back to Unity, so you get the first investor and the business is started. What were the early days like? Obviously, first of all, I think I'm interested to first of all understand the transition you made from, okay, this is the job, but I've got a job and I need to transition to that. Was it, did you sort of like, as soon as you got your funding, was it, okay, let's move
Instant.
on? Okay, so you didn't.
Instant. I left whatever I was doing at that time. It might have been real estate, it might have been web design. At one point I was gigging around with my daughter because I'm a musician as well, and I was just earning money out of that. I can't remember what exactly I was doing, but I remember the day the money hit the bank. I cleared out a room, set up the computer, started building the website, bought the domain name, because I'm an experienced startup person at this point, and I was a web developer, so I could do everything myself. So I'm setting it up. On the surface, it looks like, hey, this ISP's just popped up overnight. I bought equipment. I started testing the equipment. I was so happy. It was like I was back in my happy place, starting a company, doing what I love to do. I work harder. It's easy to work harder for yourself than it is for someone else. And I was probably doing 14, 16-hour days, 7 days a week then to do everything that you have to do to start a company. Register the name, get the domain, build the website, do all of those things, test the equipment, build the processes. So then I found one installer. I worked with some consultants. One of them you probably know, Terry Baum.
Yes.
So Terry and I are still mates, and he actually helps me with the internet on the island. We've got high-speed wireless internet on the island, of course, roomy, being us. So Terry and I basically, with the help of John Lindsay, actually, designed the first system.
I interviewed him.
Right. The first system. The radio that went on the roof, how we cabled it, where the router would sit, what the wall plate would look like in the room, all of that sort of stuff connecting to the wireless router, how the whole system would work. And so we designed all of that on paper, did some tests, put a mast on my own roof. I just had a rental at that point, and I was pointing dishes at it and setting things up in parks and running all these tests. And then, just through word of mouth, find your first client. Set up your first tower. I think the first equipment we might have put on Westpac House. It was the first equipment that we put on the roof of that. And then that's when I started to learn about licensing agreements, the Telecommunications Act, all of those sorts of things. So it was a steep learning curve. I knew nothing then. But people like John Lindsay and Terry Baum, Terry had worked at Internode. Obviously, John Lindsay was the CTO there. Those sorts of people helped me a lot in the early days in understanding how the internet works, and I didn't know any of that stuff, of course.
Did you have any existing relationship with these people? Because I'm trying to unpack when you're starting out something new and you don't have a very concrete idea of what it takes, because that looks like what you've done. I mean, you had some knowledge of technology, obviously, before, and some background in some of the things you've done with Bluetooth. Did you know John and Terry before?
No.
And how do you manage to convince these guys to enroll them into your vision, especially because it's almost like finding co-founders, in for lack of a better word, or like those early people to get to believe in what you're trying to do.
So I found Terry by accident.
Okay.
He was working for an organisation, Pregnancy and Babies Expo, or whatever, and he was doing the IT for them, and I ran across him when he was doing that work, and I told him my idea, And he was like, oh, but what about this and what about that? And he like kind of challenged some of my ideas, and I could see he knew what he was talking about. And I said, oh, would you want to come and help me do some of this stuff? And so he came on as a consultant, like on an hourly rate, and he was a software developer. So he helped put some of the early software together, because we developed a lot of our own software to run the ISP as well. So that happened by accident. John Lindsay came about because of Marty Govan.
Okay.
You know Marty Govan?
Yeah.
I'd known Marty Govan from my previous businesses, and I knew he'd got a good exit and that he was quite influential around town. I reached out to him on LinkedIn or something like that and said, hey, I want someone to sense check this business model. I think it can work. And he introduced me to John Lindsay. And then John Lindsay was very supportive, but there are other people in the industry were questioning what I was saying could be done. They were kind of, this has all been done before. We've tried Wi-Fi, it doesn't work. And unbeknownst to me, there was already a company in Adelaide called Newscope. I didn't even know they existed.
Yeah.
This is how much competitor check that I did. I didn't even know they existed.
Yeah.
And they already had, maybe 10,000 clients or something like that here in Adelaide, and they've been going for like 10, 13 years. So we came out of the blocks pretty fast and started getting some clients, and they were calling us like the new kids on the block and belittling us and saying we didn't know what we were talking about and all of this. So straight away there was this competitive tension in that space. But I just stayed true to my course and tried to build a good company that relied on delivering good service. And, you know, like you said, said earlier in our conversation, I turned up to do the install at your business.
Yeah.
Now, that was very common in the early days because I was the network admin, the installer, the website developer, the spokesperson for the company, the business development manager, whatever. All of those things were all me. Customer service. I remember doing customer service when I was in North Queensland at my on my stepfather's veranda, sitting there having a beer with him while I'm answering customer service calls on my phone from Townsville when the network was here in Adelaide. I remember doing that because there was no one else to answer the phone.
Yeah. So what are some of the early challenges you encountered when you started to scale that business?
Capital.
Okay.
So 100% capital. The faster it grew, the more you needed. So let's say.
Is it because it's hardware related in a lot of like? What are some of the? Is it because there's so much hardware involved, licensing or people?
So let's break this down. Let's say at this point we've got 100 clients on the network, and let's say ARPU, average revenue per user. That's what they use in telecommunications. Let's say it's $60, which would be high. A lot of ISPs run on maybe 40, 50. But let's say we're getting on average $60 from a client. We've got 100. That means we're only making $6,000 a month. Right? $6,000 a month doesn't even pay the wages or the rent or anything like that. So 100 clients on a network is not enough.
Yeah.
You need to get to around 10,000 to be able to build a profitable business. So those first 100 might have taken 6 months to get, and then you might get to 1,000 in the next 6 months, and then maybe a year later you might get to 5,000. It's hard work to get to 10,000 customers on any startup. So let's say the next 100 customers, let's say it's $300 per install that you got to come up with and buy hardware for. So you got to buy that in advance. So there's $30,000 worth of hardware, and you're only making $6,000 a month. So in that early stage of the business, there's no way without investors that you can scale and then you can build. And that doesn't even take into account the tower side. So on the tower side that you're pointing these dishes to on people's roofs, there's equipment there. And then you need a data center with expensive routers and all this sort of stuff. So you're forever paying out money for hardware. So I was forever having these massive builds with hardware suppliers, and in the end, hundreds of thousands of dollars a month to grow the network, to build it out. But the good thing about a business like this and why I like the model is it's repeat revenue. Yeah. So then the next important thing in telecommunications other than your ARPU is your churn. So how many people are leaving your network? And instead of people leaving our network, they were telling other people. And, that's probably how you heard of us. That's probably how you ended up with us.
Yeah.
The word of mouth.
It was pretty good in terms of what I liked about it is the speed was really good, and it was both up and down, which was
with
a
low
very big
latency
deal.
as well,
Yeah.
which is important for internet for some people. Yeah. So I knew the product could win, but it was raising the money. So it really took off when we got the attention of James Spenceley and Tony Grist, the guys who started Vocus and Amcom, and they merged together and became the big Vocus. At one point, I think they had a market cap of $5 billion. They were listed on the ASX. Around that time was when I ended up getting a meeting with James, a telephone call from a car park. I was in Melbourne setting up some network. I was in a car park in some outer suburb in a council car park, having a half-hour call with James Spenceley. That's my one chance to pitch to him to become an investor in the company. Until then, it was mainly these early seed investors like anaesthetists, surgeons. They were all in this group of people who knew each other.
A syndicate,
Yeah, and they might put 50,000 in here, but that wasn't going to cut it as the business kept growing, so we needed to go up another level. So I had this one call with James, and he was like finishing my sentences. I was finishing his sentences. He was like so dialed into what I was talking about, I didn't have to tell him wireless makes sense because I thought I'd have to prove to him, because he's a fibre person.
Yeah.
They're all about fibre, and I thought I'd have to prove to him. He understood it straight away. And then him and Tony put an investment proposal together, and they tipped in $1 million. But it wasn't the $1 million that they tipped in. It was, they set some very tough targets for us to hit that we had to meet. So that made me really, really focus on sales and delivering those sales and growing the company fast.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it opened up the floodgates on the East Coast for everyone else to invest, because we then became clients of Bell Potter. They were our brokers. Tony and James and all those guys, they knew every investment house in the East Coast. They'd all invested in Vocus before. They'd all made a lot of money in Vocus. So then having someone like him invest in the company, him and Tony, and all the others wanted to follow. Yeah. So at the end of the day, they say people invest in people, not in ideas and technology. So when you walk into a boardroom, you sit down and there'll be, 3 people on that side, and they'll grill you about your business, but they do it in a very casual way. When you get to that level, it's actually more relaxed than you think most of the time. Yeah. And you walk in, as long as you know your stuff, they'll say, what's your EBITDA going to look like in 12 months? What's this? What's that? And you have to answer straight away. If you don't know your numbers or you don't know something they ask you, the meeting's pretty much over.
Did you have the skills to do that kind of stuff? Or is it something that you... Because I think what happens with a lot of businesses is, up until this time, had you run a business at that level of scale? And how do you... what was your process of, up-leveling yourself to a point in time whereby you can start to handle that level of complexity?
Well, eventually it caught up to me, didn't it? It got rid of me. But I believed I could have taken the company to another level, but not as fast as the guys who took over from me. All credit to them. They did an amazing job. But I think I'm honest with myself, and I'm emotionally intelligent enough to know when I'm drinking my own Kool-Aid and when I need to learn, and I just constantly learn and try and keep up. So I didn't have those skills. But what I found was people with more money who had the ability to really change your company and invest was very different to the people I'd spoken to in Adelaide, who were the angel investors who want to prove you wrong or find you're flawed. These were very supportive people. And I'd sit down and just tell them my story and the journey so far and say why I believed in the company, and they would believe it. They would just go, this guy's believable. I understand it. He's professional. He's got his act together. He's got runs on the board. They would see all of the achievements that we'd done before. I had people like Tony Grist and James Spenceley investing, which gave us credibility. We had people like John Lindsay who had helped us in the early days. This gave us some credibility, and that really helped. So I just learnt as I went. Okay. And maybe might have messed up maybe 2 or 3 investor presentations out of about 100.
Okay.
And there were some no's, but they weren't no's because I messed something up.
Yeah.
I remember one specifically in Melbourne. and this is where you learn these lessons. Sometimes there can be a bigger ego in the room, and I won't say who it was, but it was a very wealthy family in Melbourne, and I got a meeting with them, a family office, and I was there with my accountant Angus at BDO, and we're in the meeting, and everything's going great. And then he goes, right, I want my CFO to look over the numbers. And then they ask for a meeting. And they get the meeting and they start challenging me. And they're like, there's no way you can model out $60 ARPU or something along these lines, because that's not going to happen, and all these reasons. And I wasn't defensive. I just said, I disagree. I think we will do that, and we have done that, and here's the proof, and here's why. I didn't just accept, but I didn't read him. He pretty much went silent and said, okay, that concludes our meeting, and hung the phone up, and then ghosted. He was just like, no, I don't want anything to do with you, because I disagreed with him.
Yeah.
And I didn't read that. But at the end of the day, it's probably not an investor you want.
Absolutely.
Anyway. But
Yeah.
So the growing, you have to adapt quickly. And I guess it's like, how does a Steve Jobs, how does an Elon Musk, how do any of these people who start these fast growth companies, how do they hang on the whole journey? And as you rightly pointed out, not everyone can.
Yeah. I'm very keen in terms of like the process you use to raise capital. What was it, a case of I just need to raise some money, or was it in the early days, or at one point in time, were you looking at strategic value, or what was your criteria in terms of finding investors, or was it a case of like, okay, we're burning cash right now. Anybody with a checkbook, please.
No, at one point it was literally like I said, I would go to Sydney and do a round with the investors, and we had different brokers over time. We built up to Bell Potter. You don't normally just walk straight in the door to Bell Potter and they take you on as a client.
We're using brokers.
Different brokers. So we worked our way up. James and Tony had introduced us to some people they'd worked with early on, and that really helped. And that was smaller scale. And then, so Bell Potter can do a round of, $10-15 million, and they'll get $500,000 here, $1 million there, that sort of scale. But we always knew we needed investors, but we outgrew the angel investors. And then how do you get from there to getting in front of the next group of people? Because these were they're not unsophisticated investors. They've invested in other things, but they're not VCs who do this all day, every day. And like I said, my experience before with raising capital was it's impossible. I didn't understand it at all. So part of it has to be luck. Part of it has to be determination. Part of it has to be meeting the right people at the right time, leveraging relationships. I can't even remember how I got the meeting with James Spenceley. Maybe it was through John Lindsay. I don't know how that happened, but because I can't remember. But if that sequence of events didn't happen, like I said, at any one of those points, the business could have fallen over. Because as you know, cash is king, and at any one of those points we could have run out of money. We would have enough clients on the network to maybe pay the rent, keep the lights on, take a very modest wage, but I wouldn't be able to have staff, wouldn't have been able to grow, wouldn't have been able to buy equipment to put on roofs if I didn't keep raising money.
Okay. I'm interested in terms of like when you run a business that is, I wouldn't call it volatile, because by the time you get to build your business to a certain level of critical mass where you can start to feel that now the economics of, you've got enough, you've got enough of customers coming in, and you're going through those near-death experiences. How do you manage your mental well-being? Because it can be a little bit scary, because it's kind of like if you don't raise this round, then potentially
you're done.
You're facing death in a lot of times.
It's
how do you manage your mental well-being? How do you sort of keep focus? How do you, because obviously there's a lot of stress involved at that point.
It's very scary, and I still think I have some post, like what they would call trauma because of that. Now I'm very much now do not enjoy if there's anything you do where you can't 100% say you can financially do this without the assistance of others. I don't want to be in that space anymore. It's not enjoyable. That's one part of the job I did not like at all. Having knowing that at any point it could all go belly up. And then, because you know it has before,
Yeah.
and you know the chances, when you
Yeah.
know the odds.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
most people go into a startup thinking, well, I'm going to be a success. The
Yeah.
chances are very small.
Yeah.
And the chances of doing what we achieved are very, very small.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
almost too small to believe. Most people wouldn't even gamble on it. It's not worth the risk to put yourself through that. There were times when an investor was going to put in money and maybe we got wages the next day, and at this point we're talking, you know, maybe $150,000 worth of wages, and you need that money to pay wages, and they pull out at the last minute, and you're ringing around to find someone else to put some money in. There were moments like that, literally. So that's not easy, and not everyone can cope with that.
Yeah.
And that wasn't through poor management of
Yeah.
the company.
Of course.
That's just through a fast scaling business that needs a lot of capital to
Absolutely.
keep it growing.
Yeah, it's a hungry beast. At what point in time do you start to feel that, okay, I think we'll be fine? At what point in time do you start to feel like, okay, now we're hitting some critical mass,
Yep.
we can sort of breathe? Because I'm assuming with a business like yours, you need enough critical mass to whereby the number of customers that are coming in and the recurring income from that customer coming in is starting to cover some of that burn you're having in terms of having new customers install. At what point in time do you feel that this is working okay? I can start to breathe. I can, yeah.
Yeah, I had that goal of 10,000 customers because
Yeah.
that's what I'd modeled out.
Yeah.
It was around then. And it was also knowing that there were bigger investors involved now that could tip more in if you can keep hitting targets. And that's the very big if. If some of your assumptions are off,
Yeah.
if your modeling is off, if you're not going to grow as fast as you predicted, for instance, our rollout in Melbourne was much slower for take-up than Adelaide was. I don't know whether that's because we had local connections in Adelaide and it just grew faster, but it took a lot longer to get going in Melbourne. And so we didn't hit all our targets for the Melbourne rollout of the business. That probably around 10,000 customers, I thought I'd be safe. But what we decided to do was the ASX listing. And that was probably a year and a half in the making. It takes a long time to list a company and
Yeah.
a lot of work that goes into it. And we did that ourselves, like with the help of lawyers and others. But the ability to be able to raise money on a market like that means that you have access to capital all the time. But again, you have to caveat that with, if you miss a target, that, you know, a publicly listed company is even more brutal. And so this is when I found out the double-edged sword of, you know, having investors. It's great that they've helped you grow the company, and they're great that they're all going in one direction.
Yeah.
But as soon as you upset one powerful shareholder, the ride's pretty much over for the founders. And it's like, that's kind of what happened. What happened at that point, I guess, if I can jump into that.
Yeah, yeah.
Or do you have that question for after?
Yeah. Oh, we're gonna get to that
Yep.
point in time. Because the part that I'm interested in is, okay, so there's that initial, obviously taking the business and starting to feel like the mechanics are working. I'm interested in the transformation that are going in your mind at that point in time. How do you find yourself transforming as a leader in your business? Because you started off with a few people. Up until that time, probably the most you've had is this amount of people in terms of the company. Now you've got bigger headcount, a lot more complexity. How do you find yourself transition? How do you transition yourself as a leader?
Yep, that's when I learned about empowering people.
Yeah.
And I was always a leader who I think inspired people and often had vision and could bring people along on the journey. I had that part of being a leader covered, but probably what I didn't have covered was trusting and empowering other people and building a culture of people around you who understood your vision, who would help you do that in a larger team. So I discovered, probably by accident, that, you know, a good manager can only manage 10 to 15 people well at any one time, to give them the care and the support that a leader needs to give people. Staff know when they're not being looked after. Staff know when their boss doesn't care. Staff know when their boss is too busy, stressed out all the time, all of those things. And you can't have that in a fast-growing company. You need that solid underpinning of leadership. So that's when I worked out that empowering, a certain probably 3 or 4 people within Unity to be able to run areas of the business and do it really well, and to be able to support them and to work alongside of them and to listen to them and to have regular communication, all of those basics. That's when I probably learnt to be a good manager. Before that, I was the typical entrepreneurial startup kind of leader, but I didn't understand managing people or management. I didn't ever get trained in it. I didn't go to management school. I didn't understand any of that, and I guess I learnt the hard way by making mistakes and upsetting people or whatever. So it again, have an appetite to learn and to constantly improve.
That's awesome. And what are some of the mindsets or limiting beliefs that you had to shed at this stage to be able to step into a bigger stage where you can actually, for lack of a better word, even have a courage to take a company public?
I think that at that point is probably where I started to have some real belief in myself, in that the things that I'd achieved earlier in my career weren't a fluke, and that I had something about the way I did things that it resonated with people, that people believed in. At this point, we had some pretty big and powerful shareholders in the company that had believed in the company. Now, I still had some niggling doubts, but I believed that it was achievable at this point. Probably in the beginning, you believe it because you're naive.
Yeah.
A third of the way through, you're crapping your pants. Halfway through, you're not sleeping very well. Where's the next dollar coming from? And then you get past that and things start to ease up, but there's still scaling to be done. And then, I believed it could be done at that point. However, there was a whole thing of managing shareholder expectation, which is a completely different game, one that I had not learned anything about up until that point.
Okay. I want to talk about the process of taking the company public, because obviously this is the first company you've taken public before. Was it a very sophisticated process for you? Who did you have involved? Who do you have to enroll in the process? Was it based on the advice from your investors, or how did you go about, okay, we can keep growing this way, or we can just take this public?
Yep. So probably with James and Tony early on, we talked about going public, and they'd done it and they had a lot of experience. So I'm pretty sure that we ended up with Thompson Gear, were our lawyers, and BDO were our accountants. But you have to have other accountants involved to check all the numbers and everything, and you have to build a prospectus, obviously, and everything in the prospectus has to be legally checked, and you can't say you're the fastest internet company in Australia unless you can prove it. Those sorts of things. So it was a long process. We're talking about maybe 12 months with a weekly or fortnightly meeting with the whole team, the lawyers, the accountants, everyone, and all sit around the boardroom table and go through a different part of the prospectus. And it's very complicated documents. They're legal documents. You can be sued 10 years down the track for putting something in your prospectus that isn't true. So they're very important documents. So that all gets led by the lawyers and the accountants. And as the founder, at that point, you're almost the admin person who's collecting all of the data. Where's this bit of information? Where's that bit of information? When did you really found the company? What was the day? Where's this document? Where's that document? And you're the one who knows all of that information because you've been there since the beginning, which is probably why I was let go the day after we listed on the stock exchange. When you think about it, they wouldn't have been able to do that work without me. Or they could have. The other managers in the company would have known most of it, but they needed myself and the other co-founder to do the lion's share of the prospectus, and that's I was heavily listed in the prospectus all throughout, and that's why there was a bit of an uproar afterwards, because you shouldn't be saying that one of the co-founders is going to be heavily involved in a company post listing and then fire them the next day, because you don't decide the day after people invest, oh, we've changed our mind, we're going to get rid of him.
Yeah.
They would have obviously known that before, which isn't a great look. And the ASX actually asked that question of the company at that point. You must have known you were going to get rid of him before.
Yeah. How do you manage? Because it looks like you had to do a lot of activities that are involved in raising funds. So you're always constantly raising a next round. You preparing a company for public and going through a very, I guess, lots of meetings, a lot of admin work. At the same point, you're still running. You still got a company to run on a day-to-day basis. What is a juggle like going through all that, juggling all those things?
It's hard. I did the admin work for the listing. I didn't want to do, but there were parts of it I had to do.
Yeah.
I was the only one who had that knowledge. So take the Melbourne network rollout, for instance. I had this big A1 printer, and I printed out the whole of Melbourne map. And I don't know if you can remember our office, but we had this massive, big, open plan concrete floor area, and the whole area. Yeah. Probably 10 meters by 10 meters was this giant map of Melbourne. Wow. And I was walking on it and putting dots on, this is where a tower is, this is where a tower is, this is where and designing the whole network on the ground on paper. Those are the sorts of things that I was doing in parallel to doing the prospectus and doing all that. So we might be in the middle of a big network rollout somewhere, managing the staff, raising money if we still need to, working on the prospectus. From one day to the next, you're juggling 7 different things, and it was intense.
Yeah, it would have been very, very intense. All right, let's talk about the listing. You get listed, and you go through all that process. You've worked on this baby of yours for a very, very long time. Mm-hmm. It's a crowning moment, and then boom. Let's go there.
Yeah. So it came before the writing was on the wall. I knew it was coming.
Yeah.
I could feel it. And
what was some of the subtle things that gave you the hint of
something was not so subtle. I'll tell you. So we were told by Bell Potter on the last round of money raising we'd done before the listing that there were some murmurings from some powerful shareholders that perhaps we weren't the best people to be running the company, the founders, and that we should look at hiring a new CEO. And I straight away said, that's fine by me. I don't have a problem with that. We can bring in someone with more experience to run the company post ASX listing. That's no problem. I've got no problem with it. I didn't think that I was going to be removed at that point. I thought I would still be part of the company, and this would be great. I could learn from an experienced ASX kind of CEO, and who knows, if I hang around long enough, maybe they'll step aside at one point and I could grow into that role. Or I didn't know how it would unfold, but I was happy to step back because once you take shareholders' money, you have to do what's in their best interest. So I was listening to the shareholders who were saying this. So we assembled a new board. John Lindsay was on the board. I brought him onto the board, and we hired Mick Simmons as the CEO. We get a phone call just before the board. I'm pretty sure John Lindsay took it from a shareholder, and I won't mention their name because I don't know how legal this sort of stuff is. Yeah. And what we were told was that there were some unhappy shareholders, and that we needed to renegotiate our employment contracts because I had, with the board at the time, put in some padding in my employment contract so that if I was ever removed, I received a year's salary or something along those lines, and I had some protections in them because any founder in a growing company like that with shareholders looks to protect their position. So I'd done that in my contract and got a phone call from a powerful shareholder saying to a board member, the founders need to renegotiate their contract, need to tear the old one up, and they need to sign a new one. The new one was a serious wage decrease, salary decrease, along with none of the protections. And also there was a clause in there that said if we were no longer executives in the company, that we had to resign as directors also, because we were directors of the company at that point. So basically, a gun to the head, if this doesn't happen, we're going to have a shareholder vote and we're going to spill the board and the ASX listing is going to be ruined. So it was we're put in a position where we do that for the company and the shareholders, or we take the risk, call their bluff, say, no, well, we're not changing our agreements. signed the new agreement, and a couple of months later, I just day after the listing, I get called into an office. There's a new HR person sitting like to your right, and you're Mick Simmons, and he's got a big smile on his face, and he's basically, this is your last day at work. And I'm like, okay. I start deleting my phone, like wiping it. I don't know why I did. I just did. I wiped my phone, handed my phone over, and said thanks, and pretty much walked out. And then I got escorted from the building. And then,
escorted from the building.
Yep.
How much diluted were you at this stage in the business? Were you heavily diluted in terms of like?
Yes. I was in no position to be telling the company what to do as a shareholder.
Yeah. Okay.
No, I think by that time I was below 5%.
Okay.
Yes, and it was a strange feeling to be fired from your own company, but like I said, not unexpected. And the other thing is that, from what I saw, a glimpse of Mick and the way he worked, the new CEO, and the way the board worked, they were very professional and very good at what they did. And they were very good at mergers and acquisitions, and they knew all of the people in the space, and they had all of the connections that would have taken me years and years and years to build. So I could see what they were doing. So I was happy that they were in charge to do that. And it's not the sort of job that I would like to do. There are a lot of heads that rolled, a lot of cultural things that were changed. Things like, couldn't have Mentos in the boardroom anymore because that's an expense we can do without. This is just like bare minimum. Every dollar you spend has to make $2 or $3 maximum shareholder return. And that's what the big shareholders wanted. So they wanted someone in there who was just going to make as much money as fast as possible. And I guess that was never part of my company's yes, I wanted to make money, and yes, I wanted shareholder return, but the culture and the environment, to me, longer term, built a happier, healthier company. And I had companies like Apple and Google in mind, that you want a happy workplace. Working in a concentration camp with instant coffee and no Mentos on the table to maximize shareholder. I didn't feel that was a long-term strategy, but I was very buoyant about the fact that they would probably buy a lot of companies and merge them quickly and grow the company really quickly. And that's exactly what they did. Yeah,
because it looks like one of their biggest strategy because you had Unit Wireless, I think they ended up forming the Unity Group and buying a whole bunch of companies. And
So Unity Group really is just Unity Wireless still, but they bought a lot of companies and bolted them on, and then Unity became a brand within the group.
Yeah. That's what
it still exists. It still comes up on my Facebook and Instagram and stuff. I still get ads for Unity.
What was it like, obviously being escorted and being bought from your own company? How do you process that?
It was a bit of relief.
Yeah.
At that point, I had to go see a lawyer, and I didn't understand what had just happened and how it happened and what the ramifications were, those sorts of things. I think it was a bit of relief. The bad part was I was in escrow for 2 years post-listing. So they fired me a day after listing, so I had 1 day short of 2 years to wait before I could access any money. And then I was back in that position of who's going to hire me, what day job am I going to do, how am I going to get money? And then, of course, COVID hit. So this is just before COVID as well. So,
And how do you navigate? So when you say you're in escrow, does that mean like the amount
I can't sell any of my shares.
Oh, you can't sell any of your shares?
Not a single share. So I have no way to generate any revenue from all of this wealth that I built in the company.
Yeah.
And, I didn't want to sell shares anyway.
Yeah.
But you can borrow against your shares if you want to, and I would have done that so that I at least had some sort of income. So I had to loan money from friends and business acquaintances and things like that to get through that period, just to survive, just to be able to eat and rent a house.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Oh, that must be strange.
They could have left me on the board and paid me, $60,000 a year just so I had some money and done it the right way. And I didn't do anything wrong to the company. I felt that side of it was a bit unfair and cruel.
Absolutely.
But then I also understand their point. Their point probably would have been, we don't want this guy hanging around causing trouble, having different opinions to us. They just want to wipe the slate clean and run the company the way they wanted to. And if I'd built that team, so I had relationships with a lot of the team members, friendships, strong friendships that have been built over a long time. So perhaps I would have negatively influenced some of those people, not meaningfully, but I may have. So I understand why they got rid of me.
Ah, gotcha. So your culture was more around, let's build a happy place for these other new guys are like, all right, let's do
Let's just
whatever.
make money for shareholders.
Let's make money for shareholders. So there's a very big crash of culture. So it means that it looks like a culture crash is probably one of the reasons why most CEOs and most original founders, I guess, end up getting booted out of the companies.
Yeah. I probably would have left if it was like that for too long. And that's what happened. I slowly saw all the people I knew leave the company.
Okay.
Whether they were forced out or whether they left.
Yeah.
And yeah, in the beginning, I guess everyone's like, well, this is my job. I need to stay here. I can't be loyal to the founders and leave with them. I'm going to stay here.
Of course.
And I didn't expect anyone to do that. But over time, most of them left.
Okay.
Or were removed.
Oh, wow. Okay. That is very fascinating. So, so you had your 2 years period of like, were you working? Were you doing stuff? Or
No, I was probably just daydreaming about what I'll do when I finally get out of escrow and I can access the money, that capital, what I would do with it, where I would invest it. At this point, I didn't own a house. I had no assets to my name. Everything I'd put into companies all the way through. So I was like thinking about, buying my first house.
Oh, wow.
And those sorts of things. So I had a lot of time to daydream, research, do those sorts of things. And that's where the idea for Rumi came up, buying an island.
I'm actually very keen in terms of understanding that transition of like, okay, I've spent the last pretty much all my career working in building technology, and now I bought an island and started it's such a beautiful facility. Why an island? Why not just go back to hardware? Or are you so why not go back to tech? Or are you so banned by technology at this point in time? You're like, I can't wait to get far away from that stuff as much as possible.
No. So my currently I am, the island is everything for me. However, I have not given up on tech. And my wife Natasha will attest to this. I talk science all the time. I talk robots. I talk AI. I talk nanotechnology. Her eyes just glaze over. She finds it very boring. And I try and explain to her science is around us everywhere. So I still love tech. And I think we're in very exciting times for tech. And I'm not saying that I won't do anything ever again. She almost made me promise that I won't do anything crazy because it takes over your whole life.
She's in the studio, so she's a witness.
So I'm not, because we're kind of in that space with the island where we've been dragged into it, and I'll tell you how it started.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm very keen to know how you got started, and
it's like everything else. It starts off small and grows big. The kernel of the idea was when I was young, I grew up in North Queensland. We did a lot of fishing, swimming, sailing. We used to go over to Magnetic Island every weekend, and I just had this dream that one day I would have this little island of my own somewhere, and I could just fish and every day and live off the land and have a simple life. That was my plan. So I used to daydream, and when I was an entrepreneur, you set that goal for yourself. I was like, one day I'm going to buy an island, and I looked at tiny little islands, almost as big as this table in Canada that you could buy for like $5,000 and like all different levels of islands. And I'm like, oh, maybe one day I could afford an island like this. And I was probably looking at islands like for $500,000. And there are lots of them in the world that you can buy or you can lease them. So when I knew the type of money that was coming from the exit, I started shopping for real for islands. Like instead of daydreaming and I knew already the landscape, I knew what they were worth. And I was looking at one that Mel Gibson owned and was selling in the Philippines, and I was talking to the broker about that. And then I discovered a newspaper article where there was an island off of Port Lincoln. It was a 10-year-old newspaper article, and it basically said, buy your own private island for the same price as a Sydney mansion. And I found the article, and I had a contact number on the bottom. I rang the number and I said, I'm sure the island's already sold, but can you tell me how much it sold for? And they said, oh no, it hasn't actually sold at all. It's still up for sale technically. I can introduce you to the family. So I met the family. At this point, I was thinking with the island, I'll just build a nice house and maybe some guest accommodation and it's for friends and family, and I'm just going to go to this island and chill out, catch fish.
Yeah.
I was watching a lot of catch and cook videos on YouTube.
Yeah.
That was my favorite thing. People who take a boat out to a remote island just with some very basic things and then live off the land. Like, I was very into that survival. So that whole, I guess, COVID thing too.
Yeah.
When the zombies attack and you're going to survive on your own island.
Because historically, if you look at Rumi, the island, it was historically, I think, is it a sheep?
So Louth Island
sheep
was a
farm,
sheep farm. It's
sheep
been
farm,
a
yeah.
sheep farm for
Yeah.
the last 200 years.
Yeah.
It's been a sheep farm because they believed the wool grew faster there. So fast forward to 21, end up buying the island. I spent some time on the island and I discover how beautiful it is. There's something about the island that doesn't translate to the videos and the photos that you see of it. And we have it, every guest that comes now, I'm going to brag, we've probably got like 50 5-star reviews now, something in that vicinity,
Yeah.
of people who just fall in love with the place. And we see the change in our guests. They'll turn up on the first day and they'll still be a bit tense from, the big city life and looking at their phone. By day 2, they're different people. Their body language has changed. They've eased into the island. They're loving it. It changes people. And I can't describe it. So that happened to me. And I was like, I have to do something more with this island than just put a basic house and some guest accommodation on it. And that's where the idea to build a resort came in. And at first it might have been, 12 self-contained cabins, and then that grew into restaurants and day spas and luxury villas, and where we are now, which by the end will be, probably north of a $50-60 million development. But it's a family passion project now. It's for Natasha and I. It's our legacy. We're very passionate about it. We want to maintain ownership of it, and we want to leave it for our family, for next generations. We want to take what was a abandoned sheep farm covered in weeds and turn it into this utopia where you go there and it's just everything's incredible from start to finish and is fully revegetated. And so far we're on track to do that.
Oh, wonderful.
However, again, being naive, you might think it's easy to build a luxury off-grid eco resort on an island. It's not, and it costs a lot more than you think it's going to cost you.
It would be, because I'm thinking everything you're building, you have to bring it in.
And it's infrastructure. It's the same. It's the same. Getting back to Unity, it's capital intense in the beginning. So we have a desalination plant. We have a megawatt of solar. We've got batteries. We've got so many things. We've got landing barge. We've got ferries. We've got farming equipment. We're revegetating the island. All of these things, all of this infrastructure. It's basically we're building a small city. And it's a large island. If you stretch it from Adelaide Oval to Green Hill Road, tip to tip, that's how long it is. So it's probably the size of the Adelaide CBD.
Oh wow! Yeah.
But when you're there, you don't have that feeling because you don't see all the high-rise buildings and everything around. You don't get the scale. You feel that it's a lot smaller until you start to travel around, and it's quite large.
What are you excited about in the future now that you've gone through the initial you've gone through the tech side of things, you've gone through building an island? What are some of the things you're excited about the future? It might not be things you want to do, but opportunities you see for people that they could try. It might not necessarily be something you get to do, but some of the things you see that, I think people who are looking to scale or grow or build something meaningful for themselves, this is something that they could potentially look at doing.
Yeah, well, I won't be the first to say this, but I think there's another revolution coming. We had the Industrial Revolution, and then we had the information technology, computing, software development, app development, all of those things, which in some ways were meant to simplify our lives, but they made them more complicated in other ways. And we're a digital culture now. Everything's digital and online and always on. I think AI and robotics is where it's at. I've been saying for 20 years about nanotechnology that I think it would change the world, and I think it will still change the world, but AI and robotics and quantum computing and all these things, it's a game changer. To say that we know what's going to happen in 5 years' time, we can only guess. really blow up in a good or a bad way. We could solve cancer, we could prolong lives, we could do a whole lot of things with this amazing computing and AI. And I saw a story the other day, Moore's law, where computing power doubles every roughly 12 months.
Yeah.
That AI is more like 10 times with every iteration of ChatGPT. So we're at the point where AI already has 155 IQ. That means the one after it is going to be 1,550. There are no humans that have an IQ like that. So we're about to be surpassed by AI, supposedly, if you believe that. And then another iteration after that, which it'll probably write for itself because we won't be able to write it, but I can't really get my head around that.
Yeah.
At what point is life, though, as we know it now, redundant, and do we completely change? So if I was going to do anything right now, I'd be looking in those because I think they're unavoidable.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't see how we can avoid AI and robotics and people having robots in their home in 5-10 years time that do all of the manual work and the jobs that would be replaced, and it has to happen. I can't see how it won't.
Yeah. It's crazy what's happening because we're doing a lot of that work around AI as well. So now going through your entire business journey, the first business, the second business, what is now your philosophy when it comes to investing? Or because have you done a lot of like seed investing in other companies, or have you just okay?
No. I have I'm investing in myself and my family again to try and grow some sort of family wealth that I'm in two minds about that, but I want to build enough wealth in the family that intergenerational wealth can happen, that the next generation has an easier time than, say, I did. I grew up with nothing. I come from a working class family. There are pros and cons to that. Being born into a wealthy family isn't necessarily easier than being born into a poor family. In some ways it's worse. But that was the goal I set out when I was younger, that one day I would earn enough money so that I could look after my family kind of in perpetuity, and that's what I'm trying to do. So that goal I haven't quite achieved yet, but I think I'm not far away from achieving.
That's awesome. How has your journey so far shaped your philosophy in terms of the way you look at business and life at the moment?
Less business focused and more family and friends and relationship focused. I think, it's easier to say when you have people say money isn't everything. I agree, but money does enable you to spend potentially if you don't keep perpetually starting businesses and so we'll see how well I do at that. But if you take the time to stop and smell the roses, spend time with family. I'm very close to Natasha's family now, and I'd love to travel with her parents and do lots of things like that, spend time with the kids. So that all of that hard work has to pay off at some point. Absolutely. And if you don't stop and enjoy it, I think it was Steve Jobs who made all of those quotes, on his deathbed, basically saying that attaining material wealth and all of these things is useless if you don't have your health. So health, I try and eat better, exercise, look after myself. I ran myself into the ground running businesses. You're out every day having a lunch, drinking at all these events. It's not a healthy lifestyle, not getting much sleep, a lot of stress. Slow down, take care of myself, love the people around me.
And as we conclude, if you are to condense everything you've learned over the last few decades of building businesses, failing, succeeding, picking yourself up, what are some of the top, I guess, 2 to 3 lessons that you could pass on to someone that is looking to scale your business and build something that is not just about growing for growth's sake, but something that has meaning and purpose and something that you can look back and say, wow, I did something great.
So you have to be a dreamer. You have to have that side to you, I think. Be creative, visionary dreamer in one aspect. If you want to scale a really big business, I believe you have to kind of be on the fringe a bit, because if you're doing what everyone else is doing, but not too far on the fringe, just on the edge, then business model, I think is the most important thing. You need a business model that can scale. Fee-for-service companies where you're only as good as your last contract, they just don't scale. It might be a lifestyle that you enjoy, but if you want to build something big, it has to scale. And then I think be authentic and find something you genuinely love. But tech people can fall into the trap of believing in their own crap because they think this is a really cool thing, but there's no need for it. So there really needs to be a need in the market for what you're doing. You have to be really honest with yourself about that. I think they're the key things to success, in my opinion, from what I learned. If you can get those things right, you've got a much better chance.
Awesome.